Good. So you've definitely learned from each other in this experience a great deal.
I would say so, yeah.
And that would make the next two pictures, I would think, something you'd look forward to.
Oh yeah, I look forward to. You know, I'm a little bit, what we all are. We're a little bit duned out right now. But
Dune in, we say.
Right.
3.5 years you've been on this project.
That's right. 3.5 years.
It's a long time. But the results are, from what everyone says, well worth the effort. And that leads me to the last question I want to ask David. As a filmmaker, have you thought of how the public's going to respond to this? In other words, as you've made the film, have you had a place in your mind where you've been contemplating what the response will be, how people will react to what you're doing?
Well, I've thought about a lot about the films that I've loved and what it was. It wasn't. It was an experience that I had while watching them that I couldn't get anywhere else. I never got it anywhere else ever, and I would so gladly, pay my $5 to have that experience. And it took me, the films that I loved took me to another place, even if it was 20 years ago or present day, but another place, and gave me an experience. And I think that's what I hope Dune will do. And it's 4 different, worlds and a trip, through them that you can't experience anywhere else, ever.
Thank you very much, David, for sharing your thoughts and some background on the film.
Thanks a
with
million.
Walden Books. Frank Herbert, every question that could have ever been asked of you has probably been asked.
Ask me a new one.
But I'm gonna go back to the beginning and maybe a little beyond, to the real genesis of Dune and where it started for Frank Herbert, the author. Not necessarily where it began as a project, as a book, but where it began for you, for Frank Herbert.
Well, I'm a history buff and have been a history buff since I was quite young. And while reading history, I got the idea that we had not looked at the messianic impulse in human society from a point of view that I knew could be developed. Reporting that this person came on the scene and these people followed and this is what happened. It was a kind of a journalistic approach to it. I didn't mind the "you are there" approach, but what I wanted was something that showed the impact of a Messiah on history as the creator of a power structure. Because inevitably, no matter how good the Messiah, other people enter the scene, other people are attracted to the power structure. I think that the idea of power corrupting, and absolute power corrupting absolutely, is not on the mark, does not hit it. I think what happens is that power attracts the corruptible.
That's an interesting concept. In fact, that's almost the antithesis, the reverse of the process that's commonly accepted.
I think this is why great power centers such as the Kremlin, the Pentagon, Kedrosi, Sandhurst become essentially cesspools, really, because they get so many people there who want power for the sake of power. And it's my estimation of it that a high percentage of these people are certifiable. You get real nuts. This is why you get people, for example, going to Guyana and drinking Kool-Aid, because the errors of the leader are amplified by the number who follow without question. That was the beginning. I wanted to do a Messiah story that explored this.
The way that you perceived power structures at that time, and wanted to make a statement about it, is this you mentioned just a moment ago, that a Messiah can create or develop a power structure.
It occurs around the Messiah.
That's what I guess my question is. Does the Messiah walk in, sometimes even inadvertently, to a culture or a society who has already built a power structure?
Every Messiah I've studied in history was a reformer, and for good reason. Jesus wanted to reform the rabbinate, He had a belief that it had become corrupted. The rabbinical movement had become corrupted. The same is true of Muhammad. He was a reformer. Zoroaster was a reformer. Each of these individuals obviously was charismatic. Charismatic leaders are dangerous because people don't question them. They see the obvious thing that the charismatic leader is saying, that this needs reforming. So they fall into line behind the charismatic leader. And as I say, even if the charismatic leader is absolutely right and perfect in all of his judgments, eventually you get a power structure which accumulates like filings accumulating in a magnet all around the polarized places in this power structure.
So the power structure does evolve as a result of the Messiah's activities.
That's right. But not just the Messiah's activities. It evolves because of the way people respond to a charismatic leader. So it's part of the forms of our society, you see.
But in the case of Jesus, you mentioned a moment ago, weren't the Hebrews waiting for a Messiah long before?
Oh yes, the messianic myth was there
preceded his arrival.
In their history, yes.
Of course, he never really exemplified the Messiah.
Of course, there's some question whether he said he was the Messiah. Buddha was a reformer. See, and Jesus was a reformer. In each instance, you have an individual on the scene, a charismatic leader, who sees something that needs fixing. There's a repair job necessary.
Something that's obvious to everyone.
Yes, and a lot of people say, yes, you're absolutely right, Mr. Charismatic Leader, and we will follow you.
There's a broad truth to anything that's said, so it's easy to follow.
And then you get a movement going.
This is sequential. These things happen.
But they don't happen just because of the charismatic leader. They happen because the society picks up on it.
But the society had created a need or a void for the charismatic leader before that individual arrived?
Something had occurred in the society that the charismatic leader latches onto.